Frank, mid-toast, announced the promotion wasn't for me, but for Karen. My name, just moments before on everyone's lips for an award, vanished. The applause meant for my achievement now hailed her ascendancy. Frank's gaze, icy and knowing, settled on me. Perhaps, he drawled, you're just not quite ready yet, Sarah. The crisp Manhattan air, high above the city, usually brought a sense of exhilaration. Tonight, on the Pinnacle's rooftop terrace, it felt more like a chill. I stood among the city's architects and investors, the drone of conversations and clinking glass a steady hum. My emerald dress, a risky choice, gleamed under the soft lighting. The East River glittered far below, a ribbon of silver unspooling towards the horizon. For 7 years, I had poured everything into Skyline Innovations. This award, the East Side Cultural Center project, felt like the culmination of long nights and sacrificed weekends. Frank Davies, Skyline's owner, raised his crystal flute. His silver hair caught the light, making him look distinguished, powerful. A hush fell over the crowd. To Sarah Miller, he boomed, his voice carrying easily over the jazz trio, for her vision, her tenacity, and her outstanding achievement with the East Side Cultural Center. A truly deserving win. Applause, warm and genuine, washed over me. Flashbulbs popped, brief white flares against the night. I smiled, a real smile for the cameras. This was it. This was the moment I had worked for, the recognition everyone said I deserved. Frank stepped toward me, his glass extended. He tapped it against mine, the sound sharp and clear. His smile, though, did not quite reach his eyes. It was a practiced, surface thing. And now, he announced, his voice gaining a new, almost predatory edge, Skyline Innovations is delighted to announce another promotion. My heart gave a quick, hopeful flutter. The Chief Design Officer position. He had hinted at it for months. I gripped my champagne flute tighter, a familiar warmth spreading through me, the kind that comes with earned success. Please welcome, Frank continued, our new Chief Design Officer, Karen Stone. The name hit me like a physical blow. Karen Stone, she stepped forward, a tall blonde woman I barely knew, someone who had joined Skyline only 4 months ago. 4 months. She moved with an easy confidence, accepting the handshakes and backpats from people who, moments before, had been congratulating me. The applause, which had felt like affirmation, now became a percussive assault, each clap a small, sharp bullet aimed directly at my chest. My champagne, cool and effervescent just seconds ago, now felt like curdled milk in my stomach. The smile remained fixed on my face, a professional mask. My jaw ached from the effort. Karen, seeing my frozen smile, detached herself from the well-wishers and approached me. Her expression was a mix of triumph and genuine discomfort. Her eyes darted, avoiding mine for a moment, then met them directly. Sarah, she said, her voice a little too loud, a little too bright. I had no idea, honestly. I thought this party was just for your award. She extended her glass toward mine. My hand felt heavy, reluctant, but I raised my flute and clinked it against hers. The sound was hollow. Congratulations, Karen, I said, my voice steady, betraying nothing. You absolutely deserve this. The words tasted like ash. Frank watched us, a satisfied smirk playing on his lips. He moved closer, his voice dropping slightly, meant only for my ears, though anyone nearby could easily overhear. Sarah, he said, patting my shoulder, his touch unwelcome. You should take some pointers from Karen here. Fresh perspectives, you know? Good for advancement. A few scattered chuckles followed his comment. The sound burned, a sharper heat than any neat scotch could produce. It was the kind of laughter that dismissed, that belittled, that sought to put a person in their place. I met his gaze, my own eyes holding steady. We all have something to learn from rising stars, Frank, I replied, my tone even, the words sliding out with a practiced smoothness. It was a professional parry, sharp but subtle. Over Frank's shoulder, my eyes caught Mike Johnson's. Mike, head of engineering, a man who had seen more than his share of office politics. He gave a slight, almost imperceptible shake of his head, his lips barely moving. This isn't right, his eyes communicated, a silent acknowledgement of the injustice. For the next 3 hours, the party swirled around me, a muted kaleidoscope of faces and voices. I moved through it like an automaton, my feet carrying me from one group to another, my smile fixed and unwavering. I deflected questions about the chief design officer role with practiced ease, nodding vaguely, offering non-committal hums. The veiled condolences were harder to swallow, small offerings of pity disguised as professional empathy. "Tough break, Sarah," one junior architect murmured, his eyes full of what he thought was discreet sympathy. "You really had that one in the bag." I just nodded, taking a sip of flat champagne, the bubbles long since gone. My professional composure held, a thin veneer over a growing storm inside me. The elegant rooftop, with its glittering city views, now felt like a glass cage. I found myself drifting towards the dessert table, a haven of sugary distractions. Mini cheesecakes, chocolate tortas, and fresh strawberries arranged in perfect pyramids. I picked up a ripe strawberry, its redness stark against the white plate. As I raised it halfway to my mouth, Mike Johnson materialized beside me, his usual quiet demeanor replaced by a tautness in his shoulders. "He blindsided you," Mike said, his voice low, almost a growl. "This wasn't the plan." My hand holding the strawberry froze in midair. I lowered it slowly but didn't put it back on the plate. "What do you mean?" The question came out flat, devoid of real inflection. "The board approved your promotion 2 weeks ago," he stated, his gaze fixed on a distant point past the mingling crowd. "Frank had the vote. It was a done deal. Your name was on the paperwork, ready for signing." My mind snagged on his words. 2 weeks ago, the anticipation had been a slow, building warmth in my chest. Now it felt like a cold burn. "What?" I managed, the strawberry forgotten. Mike turned to me then, his eyes steel gray and serious. "He went back to the board yesterday. Pulled your name. Pitched Karen instead." Mike's hand clenched into a fist just for a second, then relaxed. "Said he needed fresh blood and modern perspectives. Said you were too established, too safe." The last word hung in the air, a coded insult. Mike's usual calm had fractured. A flash of anger, sharp and brief, crossed his face. "It's wrong, Sarah. Everyone knows this place runs because of you. Those big projects, the awards, the clients who stick around for years. That's all you." He emphasized the last word, leaning in slightly, his voice still low but forceful. I looked at the strawberry in my hand, its perfect form suddenly unappealing. I placed it back on the silver tray, gently, as if handling something fragile. Why would he do that? The question was quiet, a whisper against the background hum of the party. It wasn't about the job now, it was about the why, the betrayal that felt so personal. Mike's eyes flickered across the room. I followed his gaze. Frank stood near the terrace railing, his arm around Karen's shoulder, introducing her to Ron White, Skyline's most valuable client. Ron was a man of precise habits and even more precise expectations, a client who valued loyalty above all else. He was the kind of man who would notice. "Because you're too good," Mike stated simply, pulling his gaze back to me. "You make him look unnecessary. You always have." The words hit me like a physical blow, a sudden sharp impact to my gut. It wasn't that I wasn't good enough. It was that I was too good. Frank hadn't passed me over because I was insufficient, but because I was a threat. The realization was stark, cold, and utterly clear. It wasn't about my lack of readiness or perspective. It was about Frank's own insecurity, his need to control, to diminish anyone who might outshine him. I watched Ron White's expression as he spoke with Karen. His usual genial smile seemed to cool, his polite nods slightly less engaged. He listened, then his eyes subtly scanned the crowd, searching. My name, I knew, would be the first out of his mouth when he needed an actual answer. His gaze landed on me for a fraction of a second. He raised his hand, tapping his watch twice. Our signal. He needed to talk, now. Ron's tappy watch was a clear signal. He wasn't one for idle chit-chat at industry events, not when business was involved. I navigated the lingering clusters of guests, my emerald dress flowing around me, making my way towards him by the railing. The hum of conversation seemed to rise and fall, but my focus narrowed to Ron, a man whose trust I valued above most others in this business. He turned as I approached, his face softening with a visible sigh of relief. "Sarah, there you are," Ron said, a slight tension easing from his shoulders. His voice, usually firm, had a touch of weariness to it. He offered a quick, genuine smile. Congratulations on the award, by the way. The Cultural Center design, truly nothing short of revolutionary. We were all very impressed. Thank you, Ron, I replied, the practiced smile feeling more natural now, a shield against the earlier sting. That means a lot coming from you. I paused, then shifted to the real reason for his signal. How are the Chicago expansion plans shaping up? I was hoping to touch base this week. Ron's smile faltered, replaced by a grimace. He glanced across the terrace, his eyes flicking toward Karen, who was animatedly conversing with Frank and two board members, her blonde hair catching the subtle light. That's what I wanted to discuss, he said, lowering his voice slightly. This new CDO of yours. He trailed off, shaking his head slowly. Karen, I prompted, my stomach already tightening. Yes, Karen, he affirmed. She seems to think the original concept needs a bolder vision. More dynamic, I believe was the word. He paused, a flicker of irritation in his eyes. She suggested scrapping your entire foundation design. Said it was too conventional, not forward-thinking enough. My stomach dropped, a cold, hard plummet. The Chicago project, a $350 million development for Thompson and Beck, their largest expansion to date. My team and I had poured months into that foundation design, ensuring its structural integrity, its cost-effectiveness, its long-term viability. Scrapping it? I repeated, the words feeling foreign, impossible. I forced myself to breathe, to maintain the professional front. This wasn't the time for a display of raw emotion. I'm sure Karen is just trying to make her mark, Ron, I offered, trying to sound diplomatic, reasonable. New talent often brings a fresh perspective. Perhaps she's just not fully aware of the structural implications, the budget constraints. I can speak with her, explain the engineering behind our approach. It was a desperate attempt to bridge a gap that was rapidly widening. Ron shook his head, a firm, decisive motion. Sarah, he said, his voice flat, I didn't hire Skyline for bold vision. I hired you because you deliver practical brilliance on time and on budget. Your designs are sound. They work. We're not building a museum piece. We're building a multi-use commercial and residential complex. He looked at me, his gaze direct and unwavering. My board approved your plan, not some dynamic concept that risks millions in overruns and delays. He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper. Should I be concerned about our projects going forward? About what comes out of the Skyline now? The question hung in the cool night air, heavy with unspoken implications. It was not just about Chicago. It was about the years of trust, the millions of dollars, the reputation I had painstakingly built for Skyline. My mind raced, searching for an answer, a reassurance that sounded convincing. Not at all, Ron, I assured him, my voice firm despite the tremor I felt deep inside. I'll still be overseeing all Thompson and Beck developments personally. Absolutely. Nothing will change on that front. As the words left my mouth, a stark realization hit me. It was a lie. A necessary, immediate lie, but a lie nonetheless. As the new chief design officer, Karen would have final approval on all major design aspects. My role, under her authority, would be reduced to executing someone else's impractical visions, spending my days trying to salvage ill-conceived plans. The thought was a bitter taste in my mouth, a preview of a future I suddenly knew I could not endure. The party finally began to thin. The jazz trio packed up their instruments, the caterers collected the last of the abandoned flutes. Frank and Karen were still by the railing, their heads together, laughing at something only they found amusing. I detached myself from the last lingering conversation, a meaningless exchange about rising property values, and moved to the edge of the terrace. The Manhattan skyline stretched before me, an endless tapestry of light and shadow, a monumental achievement in which I had played no small part. Each illuminated tower, each precise angle, was a testament to countless hours, countless designs, many of them my own. 7 years of my life built into that very view. I pulled out my phone. The screen glowed, a cold rectangle in my hand. My fingers, steady despite the thrumming anger beneath my skin, opened the email application. I composed the first message quickly, efficiently, the words forming with a clear, almost mechanical precision. 2. Human Resources, Skyline Innovations. Subject, resignation effective immediately. The body of the email was curt, formal, leaving no room for negotiation or sentiment. Please accept this as formal notification of my resignation from Skyline Innovations. Effective immediately. My company badge and laptop will be left on my desk by 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. No regrets, no explanations, just the facts. Then I started a second email. This one required a different kind of precision, a different kind of thought. The recipient was Mark Lewis, Skyline's former finance director. Frank had pushed him out 2 years ago, a quiet, almost surgical removal after Mark had questioned some of Frank's more ambitious financial strategies. Mark had always been shrewd, fair, and above all, deeply loyal to the company's integrity. He had also, discreetly, tried to recruit me ever since he left. To Mark Lewis. Subject, that position still available? I typed the message, a faint smile touching my lips, the first genuine one of the night. You've been asking for 3 years, Mark. I'm finally ready. Breakfast tomorrow? Sarah. It was concise, direct, and held an unspoken promise. He would understand, he always did. I reread both emails. The resignation, a clean break. The second, a bridge to a new beginning. My thumb hovered over the send button. There was no hesitation, no second thoughts. A profound sense of calm settled over me. It was not defeat I felt, but liberation. The weight of expectation, the burden of a betrayal I could no longer ignore, lifted. I pressed send. Both emails vanished into the digital ether, carrying with them the end of one chapter and the deliberate start of another. As the elevator descended, gliding silently from the heights of the pinnacle down to the bustling street level, the city lights streaming past like a blur, a strategy was already taking shape in my mind. It was embryonic, yes, but undeniably present, unfolding with a chilling clarity. Frank Davies, in his arrogance, had miscalculated. He had believed he was dismantling my career, when in fact, he had merely given me the freedom to build something new, something far more dangerous to him. He had no idea what he had just set in motion, no idea at all. The thought settled in my chest, a cold, hard certainty. The upscale breakfast spot was already buzzing, even at 8 in the morning. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, glinting off silverware and crystal. Mark Lewis, across the polished table from me, looked exactly as I remembered him. Solid, impeccably dressed, and with eyes that missed nothing. He had absorbed my concise recounting of last night's events, his jaw tightening progressively with each detail. Finally, as I finished, he slammed his coffee cup down onto its saucer with a sharp clatter that drew a momentary glance from a nearby waitress. His stocky frame practically vibrated with indignation. "He did what?" Mark demanded, his voice a low growl, barely controlled. I calmly took a sip of my own coffee, the dark, bitter liquid, a welcome contrast to the sweetness of the pastry I'd only picked at. "Promoted a 4-month newbie over me," I confirmed, my voice even, factual. Then suggested I learn from her fresh perspectives. I kept my eyes on his, allowing him to absorb the full weight of the insult. Mark's dark eyes narrowed, a coal fire sparking in their depths. "That manipulative bastard," he muttered, shaking his head. "He did the same thing to me, you know." He leaned back, running a hand through his short gray hair. "Brought in some MBA kids straight out of business school. Had him shadow me for a few months, learning the ropes. Then one Tuesday morning, Frank calls a meeting, announces the kid is my new boss, says I'm being elevated to a consulting role, which of course was just a polite way of saying goodbye." He shook his head again, a wry, humorless smile touching his lips. "Frank's terrified of people who outshine him. Always has been. Can't stand anyone getting more credit than he does, even if they're the ones doing the actual work." I took another slow sip of my coffee. The anger I felt was still there, a steady, controlled flame, but now it was joined by something else, a cold, hard sense of vindication. Mark understood. He truly understood Frank Davies. "Well, it busts," I said, setting my cup down, the clink soft this time. "His loss is your gain, if that offer is still open." Mark's expression transformed in an instant. The anger faded, replaced by a calculated excitement that lit up his face. "Oh, it's open, Sarah. It's definitely open. In fact, he leaned forward, his elbows on the table, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. It just got better. He began to talk, his gaze flicking around the room, making sure our conversation remained private. He spoke of the Elite Design Foundation's Visionary Award. The submissions, he explained, were closing in 6 months. It was a yearly honor, the kind that transformed careers and elevated firms overnight. He had been building his own firm quietly, steadily, since leaving Skyline, focusing on mid-tier commercial projects. He had the infrastructure, the connections, but he needed a spark. He needed a name. Winning that award, Mark said, his eyes gleaming with ambition. With our name attached to a project of that caliber, it would instantly put us on the map, beyond anything I could achieve through gradual growth. I raised an eyebrow, a small gesture that conveyed my assessment. That's quite a gamble, Mark, I said, acknowledging the reality. The Visionary Award wasn't just competitive, it was brutally so. The industry's giants, the old guard, the established names with unlimited resources, typically dominated the nominations. It takes more than just good design. It takes groundbreaking, truly revolutionary work to even get shortlisted. Mark's gaze met mine, steady and unwavering. Which is why we need you, he affirmed, the quiet certainty in his voice echoing the conviction in his eyes. This decision wasn't just about revenge. It was about rebuilding, about proving Frank wrong in the most public, undeniable way possible. It was about reclaiming my own narrative. Stick around to the end to see how life's costly choices unfold. Mark reached into his briefcase and pulled out a slim tablet, its screen dark. With a flick of his thumb, it came to life, and he slid it across the table towards me. We've been quietly pitching for months, he said, his eyes still holding that calculated excitement. Just got the confirmation call this morning. The screen displayed an architectural rendering, sleek and modern, a tower rising from a waterfront. The Harborview Tower project, he announced, his voice imbued with a quiet pride. It's a big one, prestigious enough to be the kind of submission the Visionary Award judges actually notice, and challenging enough to truly showcase some innovation. I scrolled through the brief that followed the rendering. My mind, which had been in a state of simmering resentment for hours, suddenly cleared, snapping into sharp focus. The details spilled across the screen, a 58-story mixed-use development, residential and commercial, situated directly on the East River. Strict environmental requirements, a tight budget, and most notably a compressed timeline. The kind of project that could make or break a career or indeed a nascent firm. The kind of project I thrived on. The client wants something iconic, sustainable, and crucially, under $200 million, Mark said, leaning back in his chair, a grin spreading across his face. Think you can handle it? My fingers paused on the screen, hovering over a preliminary site plan. The layout, the structural challenges, the urban integration, it all began to click into place. Possibilities dormant for too long under Frank's suffocating hand sparked to life. My gaze met Mark's. Creative control? I asked, the two words fundamental to my decision. Mark nodded, his expression serious now. Complete. You'll be project director for Harborview, with final say on all design elements. Build your team however you want. Hire the engineers, the junior architects, the model builders. Whatever you need to make it happen. He paused, then leaned forward again, his voice dropping slightly. And I also need a partner and design director for the firm. The position comes with a 30% equity stake. I looked up from the tablet, genuinely surprised. Partner. The word hung in the air, unexpected, momentous. It was a leap I hadn't even dared to consider in this new reality. My plan had been to join his firm as an employee, to work my way back, to earn my stripes again. This was something else entirely. Mark shrugged, a casual gesture that belied the significance of his offer. 7 years designing award-winning buildings while Frank took all the credit. 7 years building a reputation that belongs to you, not him. Time you got your name on the door, don't you think? A warmth spread through me, replacing the cold numbness of the night before. It wasn't just a wow, it was ownership, recognition, and true partnership. This was not just escaping Frank's shadow, it was building a new sun. I extended my hand across the table, my grip firm. Miller and Lewis Design Collective has a nice ring to it, I said, a genuine smile finally breaking through. Mark's grin widened as he shook my hand, his grip solid and reassuring. I was thinking Miller and Lewis actually, alphabetical order, of course. For the first time since I'd stood on that terrace, watching my career crumble, I felt something like hope, a real tangible hope, not just a distant dream. The humiliation, the betrayal, maybe it was exactly what I needed. It had forced my hand, pushed me off the comfortable ledge I'd been clinging to, and into something far more exhilarating, far more my own. It had pushed me to finally step out of Frank's shadow and claim my own light. When can I start? I asked, a surge of adrenaline already urging me forward. Mark's eyes twinkled. How about right after breakfast? We have office space on the... Sarah left the breakfast meeting with a clarity she hadn't felt in years. The Manhattan sun, usually a symbol of towering ambition, now seemed to shine on a path distinctly her own. Frank Davies, back at Skyline, was likely still basking in his perceived victory, oblivious to the quiet currents that had shifted beneath his feet. He wouldn't know that the architect he sought to diminish was now building something new, something that carried her name and her ambition. The Miller and Lewis Design Collective wasn't just a new firm, it was a testament to resilience, a direct consequence of a calculated betrayal. There would be long days, difficult decisions, and the immense pressure of starting from scratch. The Harborview Tower project loomed, a formidable challenge, but there would also be control, genuine collaboration, and the satisfaction of building on her own terms, free from the manipulative oversight. The sting of Frank's actions lingered, a quiet reminder of what she had endured, but it no longer defined her. Instead, it had sharpened her resolve, forging a new sense of purpose. She walked towards the future, one deliberate step at a time, ready for whatever came next.